For decades, Canada accepted a painful role in the global trade war without ever calling it by name. Quietly and consistently, Canada functioned as the invisible backdoor of the United States economy. Cheap resources flowed south. Stable electricity crossed the border every day. Political compliance was assumed rather than negotiated. In the global economy, Canada was expected to supply energy, absorb shocks, and remain silent, even as tariffs and unilateral decisions reshaped North American commerce. This imbalance was not accidental. It was structural. It was reinforced through trade war logic, tariff asymmetries, and a deeply rooted assumption in Washington that Canada would always adjust. That mindset became unmistakably clear during the Trump years, when dismissive language toward Canadian industry, sovereignty, and economic relevance revealed something deeper than political theater. These were not merely personal insults. They reflected a worldview in which Canada was not treated as an equal partner, but as a reliable fallback, a reserve system, a country expected to deliver stability without leverage. For years, many Canadians tolerated this imbalance in the name of predictability. Supply chains were distorted, dependence deepened, tariffs came and went, and still, Canada adjusted. This is not about humiliation, it is about memory. Because if Canadians forget how constrained that position once was, they will never understand why a painful shift has now become unavoidable. And then in 2026, something changed. There were no speeches, no threats, no dramatic announcements. Canada quietly adjusted electricity export pricing to the United States. No spectacle, just economics. Why electricity? Why not automobiles, agriculture, or minerals? And what does this reveal about the path Canada's leaders believe they must take in a global economy defined by trade war pressure? Stay with us until the very end, because what comes next may change how you see power, dependence, and leverage itself. At the heart of this decision is a simple but profound question. What does Canada want to prove? In the modern global economy, actions matter more than declarations, and Canada's move sends a message not through speeches, but through infrastructure. By adjusting electricity export pricing, Canada is stating that it no longer accepts the role of a free backup system for the United States. This was not symbolic, it was structural. Electricity is the invisible foundation of modern American life. It powers data centers, hospitals, financial systems, tourism corridors, and manufacturing zones. Canada understood that this dependence existed. It also understood how rarely it was acknowledged in Washington. So instead of escalating tariffs or launching public disputes, Canada targeted something more fundamental: reliance. In trade war strategy, this is leverage without spectacle. The message landed on three levels. First, to the United States. Access to critical inputs must reflect fair value, especially in a strained global economy. Second, to global observers. Middle powers can assert autonomy without violating trade rules or provoking open conflict. And third, to Canadians themselves. Economic dignity is not incompatible with stability. In a world where tariffs are no longer temporary tools but permanent features of competition, neutrality becomes vulnerability. Pricing strategic assets correctly becomes survival. Canada could have acted in many sectors. Automobiles, agriculture, minerals, all carry weight, all carry risk. Electricity, however, occupies a unique position. It is non-negotiable. Unlike manufactured goods, electricity cannot be stockpiled. Unlike agricultural products, it cannot wait for political compromise. Unlike minerals, it cannot be rerouted quickly. Grid stability requires constant balance. Even small disruptions carry cascading economic consequences. That makes electricity indispensable and time-sensitive. From a trade war perspective, this creates leverage where tariffs fail. Political rhetoric offers no immediate relief when power demand peaks. Canada also calculated containment. Tariffs on cars or food trigger instant backlash and retaliation. Electricity pricing changes operate quietly through contracts, transmission fees, and regulatory frameworks. Low noise, high impact. Crucially, Canada remained within international rules. No overt tariffs, no violations. Adjustments were made through infrastructure costs, transmission fees, and clean energy compliance. Modern trade wars are no longer fought only at borders. They are fought through systems. Canada played that game and played it well. The consequences did not spread evenly across the United States. They concentrated where energy dependence, continuous consumption, and thin margins intersect. Florida and Las Vegas became immediate pressure points. Tourism, hospitality, healthcare, gaming, and data services operate around the clock. Electricity costs, even small increases, ripple through entire service chains. Businesses cannot pause power usage without degrading operations. As costs rose, companies faced a choice: absorb losses or cut labor. Many chose the latter. This is how electricity pricing translated into job losses, not as a single shock, but as cumulative strain. Casinos, hotels, convention centers, and resorts saw margins tighten. Hiring slowed, expansion plans were canceled, layoffs followed. The numbers tell the story. Approximately 21,000 jobs were lost across affected regions. An estimated $9.13 billion in reduced economic output followed, and this happened without a single new tariff announcement. No headlines, no border duties, just higher costs embedded deep inside the American economy. That is what made this strategy so difficult to counter. For Canada, the benefits extend well beyond short-term revenue. Years of underpriced exports were corrected without increasing production. That revenue strengthens provincial budgets and funds grid modernization. It creates long-term skilled jobs at home. It ends the quiet subsidy of foreign consumption, and it reinforces sovereignty through pricing power rather than confrontation. International observers took note. Several countries quietly expanded energy talks with Canada, seeking reliability outside U.S.-centered trade war cycles. Canada began to look less like a satellite and more like a node. But leverage invites response. The United States has avoided public escalation. Behind the scenes, regulatory reviews, subsidy programs, and domestic energy acceleration are already underway. These are classic trade war countermeasures. There are risks, indirect retaliation, diplomatic strain, over-reliance on a single lever, and the need for consistent leadership over years, not months. Electricity is powerful, but no strategy lasts forever without diversification. This moment is bigger than electricity. For decades, Canadians were taught that stability required accommodation, that resisting pressure from the United States would inevitably lead to harm. In 2026, that belief was challenged. Canada did not collapse. Canada did not isolate itself. Canada recalibrated. By acting through pricing and contracts, not confrontation, Canada showed that sovereignty does not require aggression. It requires clarity. In a global economy defined by tariffs, rivalry, and uncertainty, clarity becomes power. Whether this becomes a model or a warning depends on what comes next. From Canada, from the United States, and from a world learning that dependence cuts both ways. If you value fact-based global analysis that looks beneath the headlines, subscribe for more fact-based global analysis.